By participating in today's webinar and connecting with an organization like ACCESS Employment, you're definitely on the right path. Over the several last years, I've met many successful people that have benefited tremendously from ACCESS programs. So good for you for doing this and for signing in and taking some time to listen to us today. I also want to remind you that this is only the beginning of your journey. It's not a race. It's going to feel more like a marathon, a very long marathon. So enjoy the ride. I want to take some time to tell you a little bit about myself and what I do. So my name is Fernando Brandt. I'm the Human Resources Manager with PTC Recruiting, like Rebecca mentioned. We're a boutique staffing firm specializing in the placement of accounting and finance professionals on contract with clients of all shapes and sizes in Toronto and Southern Ontario. Our company's been in business for 25 years, and simply put, we're the best at what we do. I personally possess 20 years of professional experience working in hospitality management, government, and the staffing industry. I'm a proud Canadian. I'm originally from Venezuela, and I grew up in the United States. I'm fluent in English and Spanish. I'm married, and I have 3 kids, which makes me a very, very, very lucky person. I love music, and I play several instruments. I'm most proficient with the guitar, and that is not my guitar. That's the guitar I would like to someday have. If you ask my wife or my boss, they'll both say I'm very stubborn. But if you ask me, I'll say I'm persistent. A few of my areas of expertise are leadership, critical and creative thinking or problem solving, process improvement, talent acquisition, and quality management. And my goal in life is to be like Bruce Springsteen. I want to be the boss, and I want to be as cool, as rich, and as fit as this guy is when I'm his age. And just so you all know, Bruce Springsteen is 68. So, my presentation today is going to focus on specific strategies that you can all start using to build a personal brand, your own personal brand, and then market that brand to potential employers. But before we start, I'm going to tell you guys a little secret. Okay? The secret is to tell a story. So when you all watch a movie, you don't necessarily remember the names of all the characters or the year or city in which the movie took place, but you usually remember the overall story. Meeting new people can be just as tricky. So imagine how hard it is when you don't even have the benefit of actually meeting someone, and all you have to go by is a list of items on a piece of paper. Now multiply that by 30 or 40, and you'll understand that sometimes it's really hard for people to stand out. So this is why it's crucial that each one of you start thinking of your profile more like a story and less like a list. In order to tell a story, you first have to learn the story. And before you can even learn the story, you have to ask yourself, what is at the core of my own personal story? What do I really value? What makes me unique? Then, take a look back at what you've done, where you've been, and start highlighting the most compelling information. Always keeping your goals within a visible distance. That's what's going to allow you to tell your story. So when we talk about goals and keeping them in a personal distance, when people think about goals, they often think overly broad or vague objectives. For example, there's a difference between saying, well, my goal is to take a vacation, and saying, one of my short-term goals is to go on a 2-week trip in October to Punta Cana with my family and stay in a deluxe suite at the Bavaro Princess All-Inclusive Resort. 2 very different statements, right? So, having said that, the goals have to be smart, and you have to write them down. You have to write them on a piece of paper, a napkin, a wall, an iPad, whatever you want. Just make sure you actually write them down. And when I say goals need to be smart, that means they need to be specific, they need to be measurable, they need to be attainable. So even though it's nice to sometimes wish for good stuff, it's better when you're thinking about goals to stick with what's realistic, again, attainable. Your goals also need to be relevant and they need to be time-based. So how do we incorporate those personal goals to developing a personal brand? So it starts with 3 things that need to be clearly defined for each one of us. It's a mission, a vision, and a value proposition. Think of yourself like any successful company. Think of brands like Apple, Toyota, Google, Walmart, or any other brand that you respect and that you like. And think of the mission. For you, what is the mission? It should be what you want to do next. So again, we're going to think in terms of short-term goals, the next 3 to 6 months. Focus on job titles, duties and responsibilities of the roles you want to be in, the specialties, the industries, even the salary or the location where you want to work. When we talk about a vision, where do you see yourself going? So again, beyond those initial 3 to 6 months, what are your long-term goals? Where is your career taking you? What is your life plan? Think of the legacy that you want to leave behind someday. And then in terms of value proposition, we ask, what makes you unique? What are you really passionate about? Why would anyone be interested in meeting you? Why would anyone hire you? So again, focus on your skills, your strengths, the knowledge, the experience, the expertise that you've developed throughout your career. Once we've established what the mission, the vision, and the value proposition are, and you've actually turned these into logical, concise, and easy to remember statements, and remember, you got to write them down, even if it's on a napkin. You start using them to create a plan for each of the following items or action steps. And each one of these is going to be ongoing, and sometimes they're going to require frequent updates or improvements. But they should always be in a constant stage of evolution. So I'm going to walk you through each one of these action steps. And it starts with what's on your resume. So in reality, resumes are a lot like opinions. Everyone has one and everyone thinks they're right. And in reality, there's no right and wrong. Although, having said that, there are better and worse ways to go about presenting the information. So the first thing I'm going to say to the folks that are not in Canada today, or even those that are recently arrived from other parts of the world, is you need to adapt your resume to the Canadian job market. You have to understand what works and what's appropriate. For some countries, it's very different, and some countries use very different practices, and that's okay. But you definitely don't want to count yourself out or hurt yourself in your job search by not following the appropriate formatting or wording for resumes, because that's really the first step. So I would suggest that you look at different models, and once you've actually found one that works for you, use it, but more importantly, improve it. The resume needs to, again, be within whatever is the proper format for your specific industry. And I'm just going to use 2 examples. If you're in advertising, it might be very creative and very different than if you were an accountant, which might be a little bit more conservative and straightforward. Pay attention to the spelling and grammar on your resume. Sometimes people make very silly minor mistakes, but based on that, they're not even selected within the first round of, again, the selection process. Focus on the highlights. So the resume should be concise, maybe 1 page, up to 2 maximum if you have many, many years of experience and you've accomplished a lot throughout your career. But I would definitely suggest that, if possible, stick to 1 page. And again, that's going to force you to only focus on the highlights and not list everything you've ever done. And the most important thing about the resume is it has to be accurate and truthful. There's no room for white lies or embellishments that might jeopardize, again, a job opportunity. So with each one of these action steps that we're going to go through, I'm going to consistently remind you all that you need to be proactive, you need to be disciplined, consistent, and focused with everything you do, right? And again, that's going to be ongoing. People ask me a lot about, well, what do I feel is the best resume or the best template or format for a resume, and I'm not really going to give you guys one, but I will give you some of the parts, some of the pieces that should definitely be in your resume. So obviously the first part is the name and contact information. A lot of people don't include contact information, believe it or not, for whatever reason, for privacy preferences or whatever, but that's not really smart. I would definitely advise that you include your email, your phone number, and your address, because again, you're using this for people to be able to contact you. So by not having an email or an address, you're only hurting yourself. The next is a profile summary. I would, again, suggest that you highlight the most relevant and unique information about your story. So if it's relevant, include your designations and mention where they're from, certifications, or any important accomplishments. The majority of the information on your resume should probably focus on your professional experience, and it's important that you list the city and country where you've gathered or obtained this experience. You should be precise with dates, so include month and year of the companies that you worked at and the roles that you were in. If the company isn't a well-known multinational company or a household name, then it's always good to offer a one-line description of what the company does and approximate what size. So for example, how many employees or what the revenue of the company is in Canadian dollars or US dollars. And you definitely want to highlight the job duties and accomplishments that you had in each one of your positions. The next is obvious, the education. Again, be specific with the parts of the world where you studied and list the specific dates. Any continuing education, so it's more and more common that people do courses, seminars, conferences, certificate programs. Some of these things are done online, so be specific as to where and when you accomplished each one of the different things that you did for continuing education. And then in terms of relevant system skills, you want to list all systems and everything that you've used that you're proficient with that's relevant to your profile, to your story. Languages, so if you speak any other language than English, then you probably want to list it. Sometimes this comes in handy if the company that's hiring is looking for somebody who's bilingual or fluent in another language. So the next action step is your LinkedIn. So we're going to spend some more time on this action step than we are on others. I have specific tips that you may want to write down. So if you do have a pen and paper, now probably is a good time to pick up that pen, because there will be specific tips for you to use. With LinkedIn, one of the most important things is to make sure that all the information on your LinkedIn profile is consistent with your resume. There shouldn't be any discrepancies or inconsistencies. Before you even start playing around with LinkedIn or doing anything with it, you should think about what your purpose is. You have to have a clear purpose. What do you want to accomplish on LinkedIn? It's a business-focused social networking site, right? It's not Facebook. It's not Instagram. So the main purpose of LinkedIn as a platform is to help people network professionally by connecting them with other business associates or clients or colleagues. So again, you got to first decide what you want to get out of it. Are you looking to expand your network? Are you looking to explore new career opportunities or create business development opportunities for the company that you're working for? Once you know what it is you want to use LinkedIn for, then it's going to help you drive you in the right direction. If you want everything, if you want to do everything that I just said right now, if you want to connect with people, you also want to find a job, and you're also looking to develop new business opportunities, that's fine. But the more focused you are, the easier it's going to be to get a specific and a successful return on anything you do on LinkedIn. Professional photo, and this is one I really like because it's always fun. I have a lot of fun with some people and the pictures that they post on LinkedIn. Make sure that the picture you post is actually a professional photo of your profile. You know, it has to be something that really represents your brand in a professional manner. So you have to choose a picture that really looks like you. Don't post a picture of you from 20 years ago. It has to be current. Again, you want to make sure that the face takes up at least 60% of the frame. The expression that you use when you're posing for the picture has to be friendly but professional. You have to be mindful of what you're wearing in the picture and make sure it's something that you would wear to work. So no pictures in like baseball caps or swimsuits. That's not really appropriate for LinkedIn. And trust me, I've seen both and other crazy stuff that I'm not even going to mention. Also, choose a background that isn't too distracting. So a white wall or a single colored background is always best for the background. Don't take a picture of yourself like standing in front of like again a carnival or something in the background, or like a wedding party, right? And again, I've seen both. In terms of your headline or tagline, so this is one of the most important and overlooked parts of your profile. If you don't do anything with it, the section automatically defaults to your current position and the company that you work for. And by the way, a lot of people leave it this way, but it's not really a right use of the field. So the goal should be to create a catchy tagline that gets people interested and wanting to read about you on LinkedIn. So it should speak to your area of expertise and the value that you offer. And I'm going to bring that back to your own story. Once you've created a story, once you've learned a story and you've boiled it down to maybe 1 or 2 lines, I'm going to help you use it for everything. Focus on keywords, and again, focus on the value proposition, the value that you bring as a candidate. Summary. So the summary is going to be the first impression, aside from the picture, that you're going to create on LinkedIn. So people should be able to tell who you are by the summary that you add there. You should definitely make the most out of it. This specific field on LinkedIn uses up to 2,000 characters, and I would advise that people use all 2,000 characters. Don't leave it blank. Don't leave anything unused. And tell a story. Make it easy to read. So people should be able to, again, by reading your summary, know who you are. The URL is one of these secrets that most people don't even know, that have thousands of connections to URL. You can actually go in and change the default URL of the LinkedIn profile. And by default, it's just a string of characters and numbers that really doesn't mean anything. But you can actually go in and change it to like your first name and the first initial of the last name, or whatever it is, a combination of both names, if you will. It really works on a first come, first served basis. So if you have a common last name, you have to come up with something that's unique to you. Your contact information, again, I'm going to reiterate what I said with the resume. You need it to be current. So if somebody does read your profile and wants to send you an email or pick up the phone and call you, it's probably best that you have your contact information available. A lot of people do not share it with the general public or don't even make it available. So again, it's a shame, because that's the whole purpose of using a tool like LinkedIn. In terms of skills and endorsements, this is one of those things that people also don't use to the fullest extent. But what you want to do is you want to use this as a way to put in a positive word for a connection without going, you want somebody you're connected with to give you a reference, if you will, without going through the trouble of actually writing a full recommendation. So again, what you want to do is reach out to colleagues, vendors, ex-customers, managers, the people that you work with, in your previous roles, and ask them for a recommendation. And also offer them a recommendation. There may be somebody that you work with that you feel really strong about, and you want to put in a few good words. I always tell people that this is similar to what we do when we plan a vacation. You go on sites like TripAdvisor and you read about the property, and you want to know what other customers have to say about the property, right? And at least in my experience, that's what I do. You don't want to read what the hotel says about themselves. You want to read what real people have to say about the rooms and the food and the quality of the service. Or again, if you're going to a restaurant, you want to read about what other people have to say about the food. So this is similar. This is letting other human beings, other colleagues, talk about how great you are, right? Without you having to toot your own horn. And then last but not least, publishing and sharing relevant content on LinkedIn is one of those things that's really simple, really easy to do, but it's really important as well. If you aim for one a day or the equivalent of like 20 posts a month, and you don't have to create original content, by the way. If you come across an article that somebody else wrote or a link to something that's really interesting, and again, it's relevant to your industry or your line of business, then you can always like or share it or even make it your own, add a commentary and maybe share the link. But doing this will actually allow you to reach up to 60% of your audience. So you will actually be in their face, on their feed. As with everything, it's important to be proactive, disciplined, stay strong, consistent, and very focused with what you're doing on LinkedIn. And again, it's an ongoing action step. So this is a really important one to the Canadian job market, networking. It starts with, everyone's familiar with the term time is money, right? And probably the most important part of networking is knowing how to make good use of time, or what is known as time management skills. And you have to have a clear and concise 30-second elevator pitch or a brief synopsis of who you are and what you want to do. Once you've created that elevator pitch, you might ask yourself, well, why should I even network? So the reality is statistics show that 70 to 80% of job opportunities actually come from networking opportunities. So even if it's through a recruiter, oftentimes the recruiter will find you because they have networked with someone who knows you. And people are always asking friends and colleagues, who do you know who might be interested in a role like whatever it is, right? We all do that. And I'm sure that most of you may have been in a position in the past where you've done that. So the question is, wouldn't you want to be top of mind if somebody is asking someone you know about a profile like yours, if there's an opportunity for someone like you, right? So also keep in mind, networking is not just about job hunting. It's actually career management. It's something you're going to use on an ongoing basis for professional development and growth. It serves two purposes. You can be a mentor. You can offer advice to people. You can receive recommendations. It provides mutual support to both parties. So even if you do get a job, don't drop networking that you built. You have to keep it alive. It's very important. The next question is, who do you network with? And this is also very important. So what we tell people is start with the easy ones. The people you already know and have a relationship with, the colleagues, the friends, the former clients or suppliers, your classmates. This is going to warm you up and get you comfortable with networking and confident. But you really can't stay with the easy ones. You have to expand the network to people that you do not know. My advice would be target specific companies that you're interested in. Target specific industries that are relevant to what you do. And once you do have an opportunity to meet with someone, you have to be mindful of the networking meeting and how it should actually take place. So you have to initially allow some time for some bonding and rapport. You want to learn about the other person who's actually reviewing your profile. Maybe allow some time to brainstorm with them. You also want to be mindful of their time. But if they're engaged and they really want to talk longer, you have to be available to do so. So leave enough time. Don't make meetings after meetings. Leave enough time that you can stay on for longer than initially planned. The other thing is be specific. Everybody thinks that we can work anywhere and we can do anything, and there may be some truth to that. But it's not really helpful when you're networking, right? You need to be able to point the person who's trying to help you in a specific direction, right? An example some of my colleagues in my office use is the bookstore example. Imagine for a second if you walk into a bookstore and you ask the person who's behind the counter for a book. Well, they're going to look back at you and say, we have 12,000 books in the store, right? not really useful. Now imagine if you said, I want a book about Asian cuisine. Well, the person might look at you and say, yeah, we have about 60 books that are specific to Asian cuisine. Now, if you said, I want a book about Asian cuisine and I want it to be vegetarian and organic food only, et cetera, so you're very specific in what you're looking for. Now the person says, oh, I think I have one book that's great for you. And they're actually going to be able to help you much quicker and much easier. So the more specific you are with what you're looking for, the better equipped the other people will be, the people you're networking with to help you. You have to always take notes, and this is just common sense. So always show up to a networking meeting with pen and paper, because it shows that the person's time is important and whatever information is being shared with you is going to be useful to you. And it tells them that you're taking it seriously, right? So you take notes. And you always want to follow up. This is very important, right? Not just follow up as in thanking the person for their time, but you want to let them know what kind of developments have taken place over the last 3 weeks after your meeting. Or if you do land a new job, then definitely reach out to those people that you met with and let them know that you're now working for a company in a specific role. And you all know what this means, right? Be proactive, disciplined, consistent, and stay focused. So the next action step is the job application. And way too often I hear stories from people that say, I'm really frustrated. I've sent out 2,000 applications and never heard back from one. And, those are not great numbers, so I understand it can become frustrating. But there are specific things that we can do to better manage the process of applying to open job opportunities. So the first thing is, I would advise that we read the ad carefully. Understand what the selection criteria is. What is this job actually asking people to have? What are the requirements? Once you know what it is, pre-screen yourself, right? Don't apply to every job you come across because you want to find a job. Apply to those jobs that you really want, but more importantly, those jobs that you meet the full selection criteria for. So that's very important. I've heard about stories of people that apply to every job that becomes available, and again, from a company perspective, if they have 3 to 6 applications from one same person, they get confused. They really don't know what this person is capable of doing. I tell people, help your CV, right? What does this mean? It means be sure to add the keywords or buzzwords that are in the ad that are relevant, but more importantly, are truthful about your experience or your skills that you might have left off your CV. So again, if there's a system or there's a specific function that you perform that you want to highlight as a keyword or a buzzword, then make sure that it's there, because it's going to be important for your resume to get pulled out from the pool of applicants. Do some research about the company that you're applying for. Make sure you understand who they are, what they do, what kind of career opportunities they offer. These days it's pretty easy. If you go on Glassdoor, people will actually review the employer and tell truthful stories about their own experiences. You can go on other sites like Facebook. Most companies have Facebook pages these days, and people have reviews about the company and what they do. So it's another way of learning about companies, and not just applying to every company that, again, comes your way. References are okay. This actually means you want to make sure that the people you use as references, A, know that you're using them, B, are available to talk to potential employers who will reach out to them, and more importantly, they'll have important information and good information, positive information to share about who you are and what you did while you work with them or for them. So it's important that, again, the references have to be available and they have to be in the know of you using them. And then another thing I tell people is you want to track the applications. As an employer, I really, really don't like it when I pick up the phone and call someone and they start asking me who I am and what the company is and what's the role again? Sorry, it's just that I've applied to like 100 jobs in the last week. Well, it really isn't consistent with the cover letters that I get sometimes stating how happy and excited and enthusiastic they are about working for my company. So again, track your applications. Make sure you understand when you applied to the job, what the role was, and even make a note. Why did I apply to this job? So when you do get the call, you can answer intelligently, right? And it all makes sense. And the other side of this is you also want to make sure that when you do get a call from a company that you didn't apply to, you're in a position to vet the company, the role that is being offered, because a lot of newcomers sometimes get calls from companies that they shouldn't be getting calls from, and they offer a lot of, weird things that sometimes don't really come to fruition. So when that does happen, you should be careful when you get a call from a company that you never applied to, because sometimes it's not what it's being portrayed as. You all know the drill. Proactive, disciplined, consistent, and focused. So the last action step that I have for you guys today is the interview, right? Once you've made it to this stage, I hate to say it, but the job is yours to lose. Most companies, when they invite you in for an interview, they just want to meet the person and, read their body language and see how they interact with some team members, and make sure they're a living human being, right? So that's really what happens at that stage. They want to maybe assess your communication skills, they want to ask you some specific questions about what you want to do in life, etc. But at that stage, it's pretty much your job already. So here's a few tips for people to use to not ruin it at the last minute. I tell people to plan ahead. This is important. It sounds silly, but it's one of the most important things. Map out, the route that you're going to take. Use your Google or Apple Maps or your GPS to understand how long it's going to take you to get there. Make sure you know where you're going. Be extra cautious with travel times. You have to always leave enough time for unexpected setbacks. It could be weather, especially here in Canada. We have some pretty nasty winters. Traffic, especially in Toronto. Any accidents or parking issues that come up at the last minute that always tend to happen. And once you actually get to the location that you're going to, if you're there too early, then go get some coffee or sit there and read something on your phone. But don't walk in up to maybe 10 or 15 minutes before the actual scheduled meeting, because then it just seems like you don't understand what the meeting was about, or you're too eager, or whatever it is. So just walk in 10 or 15 minutes before the meeting. That's always good enough. And if for whatever reason something does happen, an accident or something unexpected, and you're running late, you have to immediately let the person that's expecting you, let them know as far in advance as possible that you're running late and that you apologize and that you will be there at a later time. Dress for success. So you have to come prepared to make a great impression. Nothing is sadder than seeing a candidate walk into a job interview wearing jeans and a t-shirt. And even if you think you're walking into a casual environment, wear a suit, come dressed professionally. You should always be the best dressed person in the room. When it comes to perfume, cologne, lotions, all those great things that we all like, sometimes less is more. So for some people, strong scents actually trigger allergic reactions and even migraines. So you got to be mindful of this. It's good to be subtle. Do more research. So remember, I told you to, when you apply to the job, do research about the company. Now you're being invited in for a job interview. Now's the time to spend more time researching the company, the people you're going to be meeting, beyond whatever's on their LinkedIn or their homepage. There's a lot of content available out there, and you should be able to find something in the news or reports or earnings calls or blogs to show that you've done your homework and give answers that are rooted in data during the interview. Come prepared to answer questions about you, your past experience, your knowledge, your aspirations. So, for example, why do you want this job? How did you become interested in this field of work? What do you have to offer this organization? What are some of your strengths and weaknesses, right? What do you see yourself doing in 5 years? Come prepared with the answers. These are all very simple, straightforward questions that get asked very frequently during interviews. And a lot of the time people sit there and don't really know how to answer. Also come prepared to ask thoughtful and relevant questions about the job, the team, the organization, right? About their history, their mission, their goals. So for example, who are the main customers or clients? What has made other people successful in the role you're applying for? Is there a specific skill set or a specific experience or behavior? Once you do get the job, what types of challenges can you anticipate encountering in this position? And one of the best questions I tell people to ask is, within the first 3 months, how do you make life easier for the existing team and for the manager, right? So the people that are hiring you are usually in pain, and you have to think of yourself as Advil. And that's one of the examples my colleague Paul uses. Take notes, as I said before. Same thing with the networking meetings, right? You're going to go into an interview with the notepad or paper and a pen and take notes. So every time somebody gives you some information, make them feel important and write it down. And here in Canada, it's very typical that people send thank you notes. So a short email is enough. If you've interviewed with someone, you walk out of their office and you get home a couple of hours later, take a few minutes to actually send them an email and thank them for their time and reiterate how excited you are about the company or about the role, and maybe mention something that they said during the interview. Because again, all you're doing is telling them that you're really interested and this is a great opportunity and you can probably be the best candidate for this. So in terms of my presentation today and those very specific tools, that is it. I want to allow some time now for people to actually share any questions or any comments they may have about anything, and I'll be happy to do my best to answer.
So thank you so much, Fernando, for an amazing presentation, and I do hope that all of you do feel inspired and motivated. So as you can see in your view box, you can see a questions tab. So we're just going to allow a few minutes for you to just type out some questions, and then Fernando would be happy to answer them for you.
Anything you want to know as a newcomer to the country, about the job market, about the experience of landing in Canada. By the way, I didn't mention this, but I myself did this a couple of years back, so whatever you guys want to know, I'm here. And I also want to thank Rebecca and ACCESS Employment because, as I mentioned early on in the presentation, this is actually a great program that they're putting in place, and they have other amazing programs and things for people to do. So I'm really happy to be able to partner with them, and I know that my firm, PTC Recruiting, is very happy to help.
Thank you so much, Fernando. And just to let you know, if you are here in Toronto, definitely give a shout out to Fernando. And yeah, your contact info. Oh.
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Very prepared. So if you do want to add Fernando to LinkedIn as well, he is very active, and you can do that as well in his email.
Right.
Perfect.
Excellent.
So we actually do have a few questions right now. People are still writing as we speak. So let's turn on the webcam, and then let's go back to questions.
Sure, that sounds great.
All right. So one of the questions is, how do we schedule an interview with a recruitment agency? That's from Cabal.
It's a great question. I think the first step would be to go on the agency's site, make sure you register as a candidate, which usually means filling out a few fields with contact information, sometimes uploading your resume. And after you've done that and you've confirmed that the registration has actually gone through, I would suggest to look up who the key person is to reach out to. And typically it's going to be a recruiter within the agency, and send them a personalized email, not too long, but just saying, hey, I just registered with the agency, maybe 1 or 2 lines, again, the highlights of who you are and your story, and say, I would really appreciate it if we could schedule some FaceTime over the next few weeks or whatnot, and then wait for the agency to respond. That's probably the best way to do it. And by the way, I think the more agencies you reach out to, the better off you're going to be. So keep your options open, reach out to people, like I said, network. The more meetings you get, the better chances you will have to actually get the right job opportunity.
Perfect, thank you. And we have a next question. So Limsey is saying, what is the best response to an employer asking about Canadian experience when you're newly landed?
It's a great question. It's also a great question. So I think, Lindsay, the best thing to do would be, again, to highlight, I mean, there's no way around it. If you don't have Canadian experience, you have to pretty much acknowledge and accept the fact that you don't have it, which is fine, because this is something that comes with time once you're here. But you can also highlight what kind of skills and experiences and expertise you possess that are transferable to the Canadian labor market. So, for example, system skills, I mean, if you use SAP here or if you use it in Russia, it's going to be pretty much the same. Or if you have specific accounting skills or engineering skills, then you probably want to just highlight how those skills are transferable to the Canadian job market. And in some cases, it also means accepting to take a pay cut or to start in a lower status position, if you will. And it's okay to let the employer know that you're willing to demonstrate and showcase how capable you are, and then work your way up to wherever you were in the past.
Thank you. So we have a next question from Ashvin. He's asking, how many positions should you ideally apply for based on your skills in one particular company?
So that's a good question, Ashvin, and I would say, and I'm going to look at it from my perspective, the world of HR, right? I would be a little bit skeptical of someone who's applying to the HR manager role and to an entry-level HR generalist role, because I would have to ask, which one is it? Is this person a manager or is this person clerk? So there's no number that I can really give you in terms of what the right number is. I would actually just say, if it's one company and they have several roles, again, review the ad carefully, make sure that you apply to the one that your profile fits closest with. And maybe state something like you're also open to other opportunities within the area or within the company if they find that your profile is better suited for another job.
Right. We have one from Ulufemi. I hope I didn't butcher that name. But he's asking, do I need to inform my interviewer that I stutter?
Olufemi, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I've met people in the past with different disabilities, and I'm not saying that stuttering is a disability, but sometimes if you're comfortable letting the person know in advance, I would hope that whoever you're meeting with wouldn't even worry or mind that you have a stutter. But you can let the person know. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, I would hope that any decent human being in a hiring position would not even worry about something like this.
So the next one comes from Charles. What kinds of questions can you ask the employer in the interview, like after the interview?
That's a great question, Charles. I'm going to go back to some of the things I mentioned during the presentation. Ask them who their main customers are, who the clients of this role that you're applying for are, internal and external, by the way. I really like the question, what has made other people successful in this role in the past? Is it based on a specific skill set or an experience or a behavior? And that will tell you a lot about the role and the team that you'll be working with. And then the Advil, remember the Advil question, right? So how do you relieve the pain of the person that you're going to be reporting to? That's a great question to ask, and people will always react very well to it.
So we have a bit of a longer question from Rushika. She's mentioning that she's been in Toronto for about 2 months now, interacting with a few recruitment consultants, I assume they're agencies, and saying that no company would pay for them to hire a newcomer. So mentioning that Canadian job market is very closed. So directly contacting employers haven't yielded many results. So what kind of strategies can she use?
Hi, Rushika. Yeah, so again, it's unfortunate. I think it's not the Canadian job market that's closed. I think it's these people that have told you that. Their minds are closed. There's always opportunities for newcomers, as I mentioned earlier on in the Q&A section. You might possess experience or skills that are transferable Having said that, it's always up to you to highlight what they are and to create a compelling story. There's so many recruitment firms out there, and I'm not sure what area you're in terms of your field or your industry. But again, if you develop a compelling story, you might be able to get your foot in the door with either the firm or an organization that's hiring that will give you a shot at maybe an entry-level position and then working your way up. But I really don't believe in absolutes. Like, the Canadian job market is not closed or very closed to newcomers. There are challenges, no doubt, but as job search, the people that are in job search mode, it's our job to overcome those challenges.
So the next question comes from Yogesh. He's asking how important is it to have a PR or open work? No, how important is it to have a PR, or is an open work permit good enough? How do employers view that?
It's a good question, Yogesh. It depends on the company and the role. What we do specifically is contract work, and so it's usually short term, if you will. It could be 3 to 6 months to 12 months, depending on the opportunity. So it depends on that open work permit, how long it's for. If it's a full-time job and you're going up against a candidate that has either citizenship or a PR, again, it depends on what they're looking for, and they might not want to go through the whole exercise of you having to extend the work permit or get the visa. But if it's a contract job and your work permit exceeds the term, you shouldn't have any issues.
Thank you, Fernando. So that's there's a bit of a related question from Subro. He's asking about how many days before pre-arrival shall we apply for jobs? So
great question. Yeah. Great question. And I'm going to go back to what I said before. Let's say you apply to the job and then you're called for an interview. You don't want to miss out on an opportunity because, oh, I'm landing 2 weeks later, right? So you want to be mindful of that. Typically, companies will post a job vacancy for a job that they want to fill within the next 2 to 6 weeks. So you want to leave yourself enough time to apply to the job, but also physically be here in Canada to be able to actually be in on an interview if you're invited to. But there's stuff, remember all the other stuff before the interview and the applications that you can definitely and that you should start doing. So your LinkedIn, your resume, all those other things, the networking even. You might be able to set up meetings. I've spoken to people in person that reach out to me, a couple of weeks before actually coming to Canada, and they scheduled the meetings for when they were here. And so we met literally like the next day after they had landed. So that's important.
Yeah, and just to add, Subro, I'm not sure if you're part of the Canadian Employment Connections program, but there are employers as well that hire through that program if you do have a PR status, and they do that hiring through Skype or Adobe Connect. So you might want to speak with your employment consultant about that as well. But it is, for a lot of final round interviews, you do need to be in person. So it is good to have a closer landing date than a 3-month period. Yeah.
Excellent.
So the next question is, please share your experience on industries or businesses that are receptive to recruiting newcomers, maybe some trends that you see in the industry.
Yeah, again, I mean, I will tell you guys that I know for a fact that there are specific fields or industries that are very, very difficult, like healthcare, for example. If you're a newcomer and you haven't gone through the process of equivalencies and whatnot, doesn't matter how great you are, you really can't even practice. Unless you, or even law for that matter, if you're a professional. But in terms of other industries, and again, depends on how open you are to entry-level positions, and sometimes taking a step back in terms of your career, there's always a way to find a compelling argument for people that are new to Canada with skills that are transferable. Again, as long as the position isn't asking for Canadian experience, which I know for things like taxes are very specific to Canada, or in other fields they might need a specific designation or a certification. But if that's not the case, I think every industry is open to at least meeting with newcomers.
Perfect. So just a question from Ashvin, this is a good one, is asking about what are some things that you need to be careful about in a telephonic interview?
Great question. I like that. Just like I said with the first impression and dressing for success, when you actually go in for a physical interview, when it's a phone interview, make sure you're in a space where there's no background noise. Make sure that you put yourself in a position where you have enough time. I have 3 kids, like I mentioned. It's never good to be on a phone interview with your kids around because you're going to be pulling at your leg and distracting you, and they're going to be shouting and screaming and singing. So stay away from any kind of distractions, noise, anything that might hurt the conversation, and be sure that you have, if it's a wireless connection, that you have a good connection. Posture, believe it or not, even over the phone, comes through in your voice. So if you're sitting up straight and you're standing up and you're smiling, that's actually going to come through in your voice and your tone. And be prepared. Have some notes written down, and it's okay to read off the notes, right? Don't answer the phone in bed. That's not a good way to take the phone interview. And again, treat it as an interview. I mean, send a thank you note afterwards. Ask questions during the phone interview, and be prepared to answer the questions.
Okay, so I'm reading Mohammed's question right now, and he's mentioned that he has a lot of experience from his home country, and he was wondering if he needs to do a course in Canada in order to...
That's a great question. That's a great question, because I'm always asked, it's almost a chicken or egg scenario. Which comes first? Do I get a job first, or should I go back to school or take courses and then use that to get a job? It really depends, Mohammed. I mean, some people want to spend the money, and you can't go wrong when you invest in your education. But other people can't really afford to spend the money because they actually come to Canada and they need to start producing and generating some income. So it depends again on what your unique situation is and what your field or area of expertise is. Ideally, they should go hand in hand. You should always look to improve your skills while you're in a position where you're producing, generating income, but you're also learning. And it could be doing anything.
Yeah, and I also wanted to also link that question with Olufemi's, with Pavel's question as well, as what do HR managers think about bridge programs? And I think we talked a little bit about that during this time as well, Pavel. But bridge programs are also, it's not really education, but it's more cultural training and preparation for the job market. So definitely, I'm sure Fernando agreeing with that,
yes.
That having that training for 5 weeks really does make a difference in your interview skills and how you manage yourself in the workplace. So
absolutely. I mean, again, you guys are doing this. This is the first step you're taking in the right direction.
Okay. What's any tips on how to respond to the salary question?
Great question. Great question. Because I meet people that tell me, well, I was making, 30 million, whatever their local currency was, and we don't know what that means in Canadian dollars, because people say, well, cost of living was different in my home country, right? And that meant that back home I could do this or that, or I had access to this or that. So you really have to work your way back from your and again, remember, realistic expectations. Your goals are SMART, so they have to be attainable. Work your way back. So what kind of lifestyle are you accepting when you come to Canada? And based on that, realistically, where do you want to live, and how much is that going to cost you? And once you've determined what your expenses are realistically, then you come up with a budget and what your income needs to be to meet that budget, right? I would always suggest that when you are asked the question, you have a range that should be probably no greater than maybe $15,000 to $20,000, the range. So I don't really understand people that say, well, I'll take $30,000 up to $100,000. Like, that doesn't make sense. You should be realistic with the numbers and specific, and maybe say $30,000 to $45,000 if that's the right number. I'm just using that as an example.
Okay, perfect. So everyone, just for the interest of time, if you can just stop the questions, that would be great. I think we have time for maybe about 3 more questions or so. And then if someone's question did not get asked, if you can just copy and paste that and send that to me. Perhaps I can just send that over to Fernando and he can send me a reply back. Okay?
Yeah.
So I do apologize for that, but there is a large number of questions and we've already over time in our meeting. So thank you so much for your cooperation. So the next question that would be asked is, So the one from Olufemi, I think you already mentioned that as well about getting contract jobs.
Yeah,
So
just to follow up on that, our firm does accounting and finance, Olufemi. If that's not what you do, then we're probably not the right firm for you, which is fine. You can probably look up another firm in the GTA. Like I said, go on Glassdoor, go on Google Plus or Facebook, read some reviews, make sure it's the right firm for you, and then reach out to them, as I mentioned before. Subin is asking, yeah, the best.
What's the best tagline in LinkedIn when you're unemployed looking for a job?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I like, sometimes as a recruiter, we look for people that say in transition or open to job opportunities or looking for the next exciting job opportunity or exploring different job options. Whatever you feel comfortable with, there's no right or wrong there. But it's okay to say that you're in transition, if you will. Don't say you're unemployed. Say you're in transition. Say you're open to job opportunities, or say you're seeking the next exciting opportunity for you.
Okay. So this question from question from Mohammed.
Yeah.
So it says, as a newcomer, it would take time to build a network in Canadian experience, etc. So how would you suggest us? What do you do right now in this interim period?
I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. If you have friends, family, colleagues, classmates, people that you know that are in Canada, or even back home, people that have friends or family or colleagues in Canada, start with the easy ones. If not, reach out to recruiters, reach out to companies. I mean, it's okay if you don't know the person. You should definitely reach out and then see if you can start getting meetings. And they can be 5 or 10 minute meetings. A good excuse is always, can we have coffee? Maybe we can sit down for 5 minutes, and trust me, we're in Canada, everybody wants coffee, throughout the day, so most people will be open to that if you offer to buy them a cup of coffee over a 5-minute conversation. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if this question from Leda, an experienced, highly proficient professional who made the decision to represent Canada abroad, volunteering in India and Mexico for about 6 years, now at an older age. Tech-savvy, athletic, driven, and committed, can regain the market interest to carry on with a career you never want to retire from. Leda, I hear you. You're actually one of the most desirable candidates. It's not the opposite. The demographics in Canada actually are working in your favor. People that are older than you are now retiring from the workplace, what we call the baby boomers, and in their place will have to come the Generation Xers and the millennials, who in some cases don't have the experience or even the work ethic that people in the baby boomer age group have. So that creates a really great opportunity for people with those skills. Consider contract work as an option, because that might be your best bet. Being a consultant, it also gives you some flexibility to take time off or do other things. But you can make more money as a consultant on contract probably than you would as an employee.
And just following up from that question, Yogesh, just about salary, I apologize, I didn't see that. But yeah, definitely you can discuss that on the first round.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's okay to ask, what does this position pay? I think typically when you apply to the job, you might need to fill something out, or maybe the employer, the person you're meeting with, will bring it up. It's okay to ask. Don't shy away from it. And if you're comfortable, again, there's no harm and there's no shame in asking what the position pays.
Yeah, and one of the resources, I can, if you have a pen, it's called www.glassdoor.com. That website is actually a good resource for you, and also you can also go on to Google and look up salary guides as well to find out what your range is. If you're unsure, you can contact your employment consultant from ACCESS Employment. One.
That's great.
Okay, so that's really all the time that we do have today. If there's any other burning questions, please do let me know. You do all have my email having registered for this webinar, and please do connect with Fernando as well, and thank you so much for your time. So we really just want to just stay in touch and stay tuned for our other webinars later on this month, and also for our September series as well. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day or evening.